Welcome to the ArmaniTalks YouTube channel, the #1 YouTube channel to help you level up your 5 soft skills: public speaking, storytelling, social dynamics, emotional intelligence, creativity. 5 soft skills to help you change your life forever, skyrocket your confidence along the way. For today's episode, I have a very, very interesting guest. And together, we're both going to be delving into the world of social dynamics. This guest is a business coach for high-performing entrepreneurs. He's a best-selling author. He has worked and managed multiple political campaigns. His name is none other than Mr. Shadid. How are you doing, my friend?
Life is good, Armand. Life is good.
Perfect, perfect. It's great to have you on the show because today's episode is going to be very interesting. It's going to be interesting because I feel like there's not enough content regarding social dynamics, and you have a lot of experience to speak on this matter.
Definitely. When we talk about social dynamics, it all starts with my belief that family is the first business. So I was raised from the time, Armand, that my 10 toes touched down on planet Earth. I've been involved in family business. So that does a number of things in terms of how I view the world. So relationships, friendship, so on and so forth, were all forged through the mindset or the lens or the paradigm of family. So when it comes to building friendships, when it comes to building those relationships, what I started to do, because my family growing up through those early formative years was my entire world. And when you work in a family business, there is no 9 to 5. It's you work sun up to sundown. And that was the mind frame that I was raised in. So from childhood to right around maybe my first actual job outside of family was at 17 years old. So all those lessons from the time I can walk were all based on that mind frame. So when I look at social dynamics, when I look at relationship building, what we're going to do in this session is reverse engineer what friendships are, what masterminds are, what peers are, and what toxicity is in terms of, let's say, people who don't have our best interests in mind, and create a framework for our viewers and listeners to basically save time by surrounding themselves with winners.
I like how you use the word reverse engineering because in the social world, it feels like a lot of people, including my older self, you just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and you see what sticks. But when you have certain frameworks that you can follow, have certain social laws that you can follow, you understand that building a friend, maintaining a friend, knowing who to avoid, these aren't just stuff that you wing. There are certain frameworks that you can follow, especially when you have 2 people like ourselves reverse engineering it for you. So this episode is going to have a lot of these lessons that we learned the hard way, and a lot of lessons that I'm probably learn from you and you'll probably learn from me along the way. So that being said, Shadid, you mentioned that your family has had a huge impact on your whole social dynamics understanding. What would you say for you right now it has been the biggest lesson in building social connections?
That is a vast question, Armin. Let's say when we look at the biggest or the most valuable lesson learned in building social connections, it all starts with leading with value. Now, leading with value was something that I had to learn the quote unquote hard way, because when you're brought into an environment where familiarity is the common denominator, when you're dealing with someone who not only you work with, but you may live with as well, then having to establish yourself or having to prove yourself is not something that you typically have to do. Once I started to move out into the quote unquote real world and build new relationships, what I found was a struggle in trying to build rapport and build relationships. So I had to learn, despite any success that I may have had in helping my family to succeed within business, I had to learn how to build relationships and help those relationships grow either their existing businesses or partnerships to help my own business grow. So what I came up with is the framework or the concept of leading with value. So in today's world, direct messaging is a passport to build deeper relationships with those who you may not know. For example, 20 years ago, if you wanted to reach out to a 7-figure entrepreneur, you had to contact the gatekeeper and send the secretary flowers and follow up. And hopefully, if you work through that process the right way, then you can get the meeting and be in the good graces with Your Majesty. Today, because these apps exist on our smartphone, nowadays you can reach out to the 7-figure entrepreneur. So the question is no longer, how do I get on the radar of that person, but what do I say to that person to get my foot in the door? So what I had to figure out, Armin, is how do I say the right words? How do I, let's say, establish my reputation and credibility within one message or within one chance encounter in order to build those relationships? So the biggest lesson that I had to learn is, okay, the person that I am, even if, let's say, someone may have seen me on the news or on television or on radio, every person that I come in contact with in that initial instance, in that initial direct message, or when I'm on stage or when we meet after an event, I have to find a way to quickly establish who I am, why it's important to that person, and what value I deliver to that individual. Now, when we take that particular scenario, how do you lead with value in your interactions with, let's say, someone who may be higher on the totem pole? What are some things that you do in order to establish yourself right away and getting good graces and rapport with that individual?
That's a great question. And I do like the whole leading with value principle that you just brought up. And for me personally, I've done multiple different things. When I was first coming into the Twitter scene, the best way that I could lead with value was to offer my skill set to a person with, say, more followers. So people with more followers, I would, just to build the rapport and the social connection, I would give them free public speaking coaching sessions. Not trying to say that I'm better at public speaking, but I could be an extra pair of eyes that helps them with an upcoming speech. So this is completely free of charge. This is a 30 to 40 minute session. They have nothing to lose, and I am providing value in order to gain that trust. So that's one way that I build it. Another way, I mean, if people don't really have anything valuable per se, say they're like really new and they don't have any skill sets that they can give, another way to give good value is just to give good energy. You see, that's like, I feel like in the social world, energy is a form of currency. If you're like, say, hopping in someone's DM and you're just automatically whining, complaining why your business is not doing well, then you're not starting off in the right session. But instead, if you hop in someone's DM, you tell them that you really like their content, you read their stuff routinely, you listen to their podcast, something, now you have led with value, so the other person will be more inclined to help you out. So to answer your question, I think a few of the best ways to give value is to showcase your skill set or give good energy through compliments, through understanding, being a good listener, and so on. And with that being said, you and I, Shadid, both of us are in a few masterminds together. And masterminds back in the, like when I was first, progressing in my life, I thought masterminds were a waste of time. I'll be honest. And the reason I thought it was a waste of time was because I thought I knew all about it. I thought it was just like a bunch of people talking. But it was the exact opposite. Masterminds really did facilitate my growth as a person. How would you recommend that people form a mastermind or go about searching for one?
When we think about masterminds, they've been around since the beginning of time. For example, Jesus and the disciples are an example of a mastermind group. So when we bring things to let's say modern times, and you, the viewer, may be trying to figure out, how do I get to the next level? What you have to realize is the following. You are not the first person to have tried or attempted to get to the next level. Number two, what you're attempting to accomplish is not an original. No idea essentially is original. So there is a proven path and there's a roadmap in order to reach that next level. What a mastermind allows you to do is to leverage the roadmaps of people who have traveled that path before and get the, let's say, the cliff notes and all the mistakes that they've made before you take the first step on that journey. So if you know all the pitfalls, if you see the video game before you play and it says, okay, the alligator's over here, the soldier's over here, the main boss, if you do this combo, you will advance without taking any damage. Your ability to make it through that game of life is much easier, and you take less damage and you enjoy the journey along the way. And that's what masterminds allow you to do. Now, I may have laid that out in a very easy to follow way, but you may think, well, that's not my situation. I'm new to this industry. I'm new to this skill set, and I may be socially awkward. I don't know how to get started. So the first place I would start is locally. I would look at my meetup groups, let's say on meetup.com. Yes, and do a search within 100-mile radius of your particular address. What Meetup will allow you to do, it does use location-based targeting, and do a search for the keywords that are relevant to your particular industry. So if you want to build an online business, if you are into e-commerce, if you're into public speaking, do a search on meetup.com first and find out the groups that exist within your area. For those of you who have no idea what meetup.com to you sounds like French. What meetup.com is, it's not just a website. It is the most powerful local-based search engine based on common interests and groups that are relevant to a specific audience. So if you're into, again, online business, using this example, or public speaking, do a search within a 100-mile radius and find the groups that are relevant. Most importantly, contact the organizer. Meetup allows you to contact the organizer directly. State what your interest is within that message to the organizer. So in our previous, let's say, a discussion, we were talking about direct messaging. So you have to send a direct message to that organizer. And if their group is not relevant to what you're trying to do, ask for a referral. Do you know any groups in the area who are who can meet or discuss this particular topic that will help me get to the next level? Next thing you want to do is, so you have the meetup aspect of it. I'm a big believer in daily discipline. So let's say you go to the meetup group and they give you all the information. You have 3 pages worth of notes. That's not enough, because now you have to take those notes, those lessons, and apply it to your actual life. So what you want to do is form your own power circle. So grab the individuals, let's say within your college or within your work center, who have a like-minded focus. This is not for your buddy who, let's say you get together each week and you don't really focus on growing. You find the talented people within your immediate sphere of influence, and you form that group. You form an alliance. You get together outside of a common area, go to a coffee shop, go to a co-working facility, and work on these things together as a group. Because if you work on it, you use the collective power of group energy, and you'll achieve it 10 times faster. Now, when we talk about mastermind groups, what would you say was the biggest shift in your life from, let's think about older Armin in the past, and what was the biggest value that a mastermind group gave to you, or let's say the light bulb moment that went on as a result of being a regular part of one?
Well, I'll give you two examples. So when I was in the College of Engineering, I remember for a long, long time, I would just study by myself. I would take notes by myself. I would eventually follow up with the notes completely by myself. And it would take me around like a few weeks to prepare for one exam. Eventually, one of my friends was like, how come you're always working by yourself? How about you start meeting us up for the study group? And study groups in a certain way are a mastermind. And I started to study with them. And instead of spending like weeks and weeks preparing for an exam, I was able to feel that group energy that you mentioned earlier. And I was able to understand the content much quicker because I had someone bounce ideas off. So that's number one. I mean, it definitely helped me in my undergrad studies. Now, also when I got into Twitter, being a part of these mastermind groups allowed us to bounce a lot of ideas off of one another. I remember when I was thinking about which email subscriber to use, instead of going on Google and searching like 10 different articles, I just hopped on the mastermind and I asked everyone what their opinion was. So that just was another avenue where it helped me. So not only did it help me in College of Engineering, it helped me in the entrepreneurial lifestyle. Now, just to add on to your point, you gave a really brilliant strategy on organizing, masterminds in the real world. But another good way to think about it is you can also build masterminds in the digital world. Not sure if you know, but me and Shadid have never met in person. We basically got into contact through Twitter. So I think everyone should have a few masterminds in the real world and also leverage your internet to build the digital assets as well. And that's the thing, Shadid. I feel like Twitter, if you're using it correctly, a few things that should be happening is you should be getting smarter every day and you should be building more connections because all the barricades are removed and you have direct contact to the person. Now, here's a question for you, Shadid. I feel like a lot of people, they know how to make a connection, but they don't know how to maintain a connection. How important do you think that the nurturing a social bond is to the entire friendship process?
Great question. And with this question, we are going to reverse engineer what makes a best friend. What makes a best friend? Now, when we look at our best friends in life, they may have started, let's say, on the playground. They may have been established through being on the same teams or scholastic in terms of going to school together. And so you have many different ways in which friendships can start. And mainly, especially the younger you are, they're started based on proximity. So let's say being within the same place at the same time, going through a similar experience together. So your friends from a fraternity, for example, you were in the same place, going through an arduous experience together, and here you are, this bond is forged. So when we look at, let's say, how we maintain a friendship, and let's use the digital arena as our playground for this example. You have to lead with value. Now, we're going to update this example to cover this particular question. So when an influencer, for example, or someone who is higher on the totem pole, you have to realize their point of view. They are inundated, they are bombarded, they are flooded with many messages that say, essentially, what can you do for me? Number one, I don't care how you're doing. I don't care how your day went. I don't care what you're working on. What can you do for me? That's how 99.5% of messages are structured. So you, the viewer, are going to be different in this case. So the very first thing you need to do is do your homework. Number one, do your homework. Take a look at their social media posts, what they've updated or tweeted, since we're using Twitter in this example. What if they tweeted over the past week? What's going on in their world? Take a look at their website. Take a look at their Amazon profile. What have they created recently that excites them? And so that's the first part. You have to get an idea of what's going on in their world. So if, let's say, to Arman's point, if you are simply giving good energy, hello, how's your day going? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I was thinking about something you're working on. Here's a resource that can help you get to the next level. Have you considered this particular template that will help you to flesh out your idea? Or I've created this template based on what you're going through to help you along. Would you like to get on the phone for 15 minutes and discuss your idea? You may have seen a tweet, and let's get on the phone to talk about this. I'm excited about what you're working on. So what am I mentioning here? What I'm mentioning here is taking an active approach to the individual that you're looking to build a relationship or friendship with, in offering various ways for them to get to the next level, save time, effort, energy, and investment, whether it's financial or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And when you do this enough, and it's from a genuine place, what will start to happen is the law of reciprocity will begin to work in your favor. And when you give, ultimately, in some way, shape, or form, you will receive. And so when you start to add that to, let's say, your own creativity, it starts to push the relationship along and deepen it, because, again, everyone else is contacting and they're saying, well, I need this. Can you mentor me, sir or ma'am? I need for you to review my website or my LinkedIn profile or review my PowerPoint slides. And you're saying, I'm willing to help you without any expectation of a return. And when you are willing to give without the fear of loss, someone who understands abundance, which successful people innately have that ability, they'll say, wait a minute, this individual is different. This individual is on my radar now. And that's what you have to establish when it comes to building those relationships. Now, what would you say is your tested and proven formula for building deeper relationships from a digital standpoint?
So for me personally, the number one thing that I would recommend is to have an abundance mentality towards people. Because once you have a scarcity mindset towards people, you come off very needy, and rejection hurts you a lot more. So say you do reach out to someone and they don't respond back, you feel as though your entire method is off. But once you have an abundance mentality towards people, you realize, okay, this person didn't respond back, but the next person may. So that's the number one thing that you need to have, is the right mindset. Now, to answer your question, like what is my best way to build connections on the digital space? I always like to, lead with the value first. And basically what you mentioned, do your homework. I don't want to say, go up to you and ask you about tips on pets. That's not your expertise. But when I was launching my book, I realized, you've launched your own book as well. I did some research on you and I asked you questions regarding that. So for me, number one is to do some homework. Number two is to make sure you follow up. And this is something that is not stated too much in building a friendship, but this is the most important part. Because anyone can, break the ice, start an interaction off, but everyone can't follow up. And the best way to think of it is like you're blowing in a balloon. You blew it all the way and the balloon is big. but you forget to tie the knot.
Hmm.
What's going to happen? The balloon's going to lose its air. Same with the friendship. So the fact that you and I, for example, are having this conversation right now, this is a part of the follow-up phase. So that's what I would always recommend, to follow up. And 3, be a good listener. Because a lot of people, they try to talk a lot. They want to always be heard, but they don't want to take the time to listen. And giving someone your attention is a form of providing value. So do these 3 steps. What do you call it? Do your homework, follow up, and listen. If you do these 3, then you are going to form a lot more digital connections. But most importantly, have an understanding of what you are going for. Are you building connections to build a friend? Are you looking for a future mentor? Are you looking for an alliance? Like, have some purpose as to why you're forming the digital connection. Now, here's the thing, Shadid. In the social dynamics world, there's a lot of different kinds of personalities. And one group of personality are the toxic ones. How do you navigate around toxicity, especially considering you do have political experience where there's a lot of mudslinging going on? How would you recommend that our viewers find ways to define toxicity and just navigate around it?
Great question. Now, when it comes to toxic personalities, you have to realize that this is an aspect of human nature that is unavoidable. You have to first, let's say, encounter the toxic personality before you know what to do with it. Now, with this particular session or video, what we'll provide for you is some tips or to help you strengthen your awareness so that your spidey sense starts to tingle the moment that a scenario starts to feel toxic. Now, we all know right from wrong internally. We get a feeling. Our gut intuition, our feeling never will lead us wrong. So what I often find with toxic personalities is that they instinctively know when to turn on the charm versus when to shy away. And oftentimes, shying away is based on establishment of boundaries. So the person who tends to be more toxic, and let's remove toxic from the vocabulary or the definition and use a few synonyms. A person who may be manipulative, or a person who may be take first, or a person who may be aggressive. These are all types of toxic personalities. So if you are a person who does not understand where your boundaries lie, that would be the first place I would start. So if your yes is not yes and your no is not no, you will be taken advantage of. So if no means no and I cannot do this, or this is not a priority, then that's exactly what it means in black and white terms. There's no finagling or, oh, just stay for 5 minutes, or can you just do this one time? You have to be firm in your decision. So in the moment, you have to learn to make decisions. You also have to know what your boundaries are. If, let's say, your speaking fee, for example, is X amount of dollars, and you're someone who reaches out to you and they say, well, we need you to speak at 5 dates for this particular event, and we can't afford to pay you, but you're doing it for this particular cause. If you know that your expenses will completely wipe you out in terms of speaking at those 5 dates, then the answer is no. But in many cases, if you say, well, it's for this cause and I don't know if I can do it, and maybe if I find a way, then that individual, if they have a toxic personality, will begin to twist the screws a little bit and get you to do what's necessary to, let's say, for them to pull you across the tug of war line. So it's very important to understand what your boundaries are. And when we think about toxic personalities, can you give the viewers an example of, let's say, a seemingly harmless scenario that is totally toxic and they may not see it coming?
Well, see, I wrote an article about this, and I love this question because I think there are two types of toxic people. One is a group of people that hate you. And these are like, say, haters, snakes, people that gossip about you. They clearly have malicious intent towards you. They're toxic. And these are the people that are very easy to tell, because once you know that they have bad intentions towards you, you know you can cut them out. Now, the second group of people are the people that love you. Now, this may seem a little counterintuitive, but think of being a person that's really ambitious. If you're a really ambitious person, automatically your social circle gets a tad bit smaller because everyone isn't ambitious. That's just a plain reality. But this group of people are, say, a weekend warrior. A weekend warrior, if you don't know what that is the type of people that just live for the weekends. They party, they drink nonstop. The entire week, they're planning what they're going to do on the weekend. Now, if you're an ambitious person, a weekend warrior may love you. They may think that, you've probably went through a lot of phases in life with them. But are they toxic to you and your goals? Absolutely, because they are holding you back. So you have to kind of identify what kinds of toxic the group fall into. If they're the group one, where they have malicious intent towards you, then you do have to cut ties with them. But if they're group two, where they do love you and they're genuinely your friends, then you just have to distance from them. And I think that's very important. Have you ever had that moment where, you've had to cut ties or you've had to distance from people that had good intentions towards you, but had poor intentions towards themselves?
Good intentions towards me, but poor intentions towards themselves. That's a great question.
Like they didn't really work on a life purpose. They would just spend all their waking moments just wasting time, that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I would say, to add on to your point, and then to jump into that particular aspect of distancing yourself, there's a few things to keep in mind when it comes to the group of people who love you. There's some people in life, and this is where distancing starts to come into play, where they absolutely like you. They are familiar with you. They have been a part of your journey, but not everyone wants to see you surpass where the group is in life. So when you start to break off and you start to go solo and start to show potential that is higher than the rest of the group, then they begin to react differently. So one thing to keep in mind is that you want to observe or check the temperature of your friendships at all times. And here's a few very common examples that will lead to starting to distance yourself. Number one, if you have friendships where you cannot share your joy, your successes, your breakthroughs, and it doesn't always come in the form of, well, I hate that you did this. You want to look out for self-deprecating language. And that could be examples such as, oh, that must be nice. Or if I had your bank account, then, if I had your hand, I'd cut mine off. And,
it's like the subtle jabs.
Yes. So these are, let's say, they're not necessarily negative towards you. It's an expression of where that person is in the moment in relation to where you are going. So when you start to hear self-deprecating language, when you start to see that your friends are not around to cheer on your wins, and let's say if you have a setback, if they say things that are not 100% negative, but maybe you shouldn't have tried to go so far. Maybe you shouldn't have tried that. You see, this is why you shouldn't do this, because that's the way things always are. That's when you need to start to distance yourself. And there's a concept that I live by that I call loving people from a distance, that you have to start to embrace if you're going to be on the road to success. Now, loving people from a distance means that through familiarity, through history, you have bonds with these people. You can't just throw them overboard. You have to keep some sort of ties, because they may be family. They may be people that you love the most. They may be former friends from high school and college. And loving from a distance means simply, you do not have to spend all of your waking hours in proximity with these individuals. You do not have to share your best advice, your ups, your downs, your triumphs. But in scenarios such as someone's getting married, or there is an event, or there's an annual charity, and you happen to be in attendance with those individuals, when you see them, you embrace them. You say hello, you catch up on old times, and then you go back to your path and you continue to dominate and you continue to win. But that does not mean that the person who is not equipped to be on a journey should be in the same wagon as you as you're traveling. What are your thoughts on loving people from a distance?
I agree with that thought pattern, because a lot of people, they just need some time to grow up. And I have a good example for this. I had this friend in college who would spend all his waking moments just, fooling around, just messing around in life. And I came to a certain point where I had to love him from a distance. Now, recently, him and I got back into contact, and he's a completely different person. Starting his own Shopify store, picking up Toastmasters, public speaking, and you won't even recognize how different he is from college. But the fact that instead of severing ties with him, I just loved him from a distance, he was able to mature in his own life journey. So I think this is extremely important, because you need to let people grow up on their own. And this is another really big law in social dynamics, is that you don't try to fix people who don't think there's anything to fix. I'm pretty sure we all have stories where we try to fix people to our detriment, but that is a big, big law. You agree with that, Shadid?
Absolutely, 100%. And sometimes in our quest to be the best that we can be, it oftentimes leads to trying to fix people who did not put in a service request for any sort of troubleshooting. When they make the call, your job is not to go around and make the service call and be the technician.
Yep. And that's the thing with social dynamics, is because we want to be logical. As humans that are ambitious, we would like to fix things in our own life, but it's very hard to understand that logic alone doesn't work in the social dynamics world. It was Dale Carnegie who mentioned that humans are creatures that are illogical. They have egos, they have their own pride, their own belief system. So just because your intent is right doesn't technically mean that they agree with that. And here's the thing, just to kind of roll back to the toxic convo. A lot of people, they don't even know they're toxic. Some people are strategically toxic, where they manipulate with a purpose, but a lot of people in their world, they think you're the toxic one. So that's just an understanding of knowing energy levels. If your energy levels doesn't coincide with another person's energy level, then that person's toxic in your world and you are toxic in theirs. I mean, this has been a pretty good discussion, Shadid. How about we talk about one more really big part of social dynamics, and then we'll start delving into some questions from my readers. So this topic is huge. This is none other than social anxiety. I'm sure a lot of people feel it, and I get a lot of emails regarding this topic. What are your advices for dealing with social anxiety?
Social anxiety 101. You have to utilize the batting practice approach. And the batting practice in a baseball scenario is practice when you are hitting pitches to get comfortable with your swing, to recognize different pitches, and so that you become essentially a natural, so that when you step into the batter's box and you are facing a pitcher who you've never went against before, you are able to be natural in unnatural scenarios. So with batting practice, what I like to do is the following. And I focus on small talk. So whenever I go out to the supermarket or whenever I go out to a meetup event, when I'm out and about within my local community, I like to think of myself as the, let's say, the club owner, for example. So if you picture the club owner, they're very nicely dressed. They know everyone in the building. Everyone either wants to get in that individual's good graces, and that's the way that I carry myself. So when I speak to people, I often, let's say, use active observation. So I'm scanning the room. And if there's something unique about an individual, I will either ask them about it or give them a compliment so that it helps me to warm up to the day and be able to, number one, have communications, build contacts, and in some cases, even business relationships just in my day-to-day environment. So that's one way, is the batting practice approach. Number two is to switch on your curiosity, let's say muscle, or turn on a curiosity switch. So when you're online from a digital standpoint, if someone mentions an idea that either interests you or it's a point that resonates with you, simply leave a comment and under that particular tweet or post. So enter the discussions online that resonate with you the most. So when you start to enter discussions and you also start to utilize batting practice in the, let's say, face-to-face encounters that you have throughout the day, it helps you to essentially lubricate your social muscle so that you can be as sharp as you can be from a social dynamic standpoint.
Yeah, and the social world is very similar to the public speaking world, where you have to understand how to reframe things. Because some people ask, well, Arman, when does public speaking anxiety go away, speech anxiety? When does the rapid heartbeat go away? And I would say that it never really goes away. You just learn to deal with it and your perception changes. So instead of saying speech anxiety, you say speech excitement. So instead of saying social anxiety, you eventually become social excitement. Because if you don't feel any kind of energy before a big social event, then you're probably just chilling with the same exact people that you always chill with, or it's a very small gathering. So for me personally, with social anxiety, you just have to understand the art of reframing, which is huge. Shadid, this has been a very, very unique discussion. We touched on a lot of different topics regarding social dynamics. Now I think it's best that we answer some questions to help other people out as well in more depth. So with the questions, I'll read them out and we can both give our 2 cents on it. We'll be answering 5. Okay. Let me pull one up. Okay. Hello. How can I build friends and know who to avoid? Okay, well, this is a question that I think we already did a good job in explaining, but just a quick recap. Be social. I always say break the ice first. If you break the ice first, you're exercising your social muscle much more stronger than if you're just waiting for a conversation to happen. What do you think about the breaking the ice part in the social world?
Social dynamics in building friendship is the game of I'll go first. and I'll take the lead. I'll risk rejection in order to build that friendship. So when it comes to breaking the ice, it is very powerful to be the person who takes the lead, because in more cases than not, the result will be favorable, because everyone is dealing with their own form of anxiety in some way, shape, or form.
Great point. How do I deal with the embarrassment of rejection? You want to get that one?
Well, you touched on it in a very powerful way in the mention of reframing. And when I use a dating scenario, for example, one of my best friends in the world, when he was in the dating game, happily married guy today, but when he was in the dating game, when he would go into a room, he would say, "No one is cuter than me." That was the mantra. "No one is more handsome than me. No one is finer than me." And so what that would put him in the mind frame of is that his time is valuable. His conversation is valuable. He is a man of value. So if he's rejected for whatever reason, it's not personal. That, let's say, that partnership, that friendship, that relationship may not, let's say, the circumstances from a preference standpoint may not have been, let's say, favorable for that scenario, but that does not diminish the value that is being offered. And when you start to look at yourself as a person of value, then you know that for this scenario, there is not alignment. So you start to look at, let's say, relationships as puzzle pieces. So that puzzle piece doesn't fit here. But in the next conversation, we'll find out if the alignment for me and for them is a match. So always think of things as alignment, and also think of yourself as bringing value to the table.
That's a very powerful point you just mentioned, because you're basically saying, instead of thinking it as like it's my loss, you're actually saying, no, it's their loss because you are the person of value. That's a very powerful point. And I think you touched it perfectly. There's nothing to really even add on for me. I will just add actually just one thing now that I think about it. Even if 10 people reject you in a row, it doesn't mean that the 11th one will. So, I mean, always have an abundance mentality and keep on pushing forward and fight through the embarrassment. And that question actually leads us to the next one, which is, do you think building social skills is like building a muscle? A powerful question, and I do think that. I do think at first, if you are someone that's socially awkward, you shouldn't think that your story has ended. You just need to view your social muscle as weak at the moment. So what do? You go to more social interactions, you throw social interactions, and you strengthen your social muscle. So yeah, I personally think building charisma can be exercised. What do you think?
When Dave Chappelle released his most recent Netflix specials, he took his material and went to the smallest nondescript comedy clubs in the country and used those audiences to gather feedback to get comfortable for the bigger stage. So when we talk about social skills and being, let's say, smoother socially, or being able to say the right words in the right moment, there's absolutely value to practice in whatever strategy or technique is most comfortable for you.
Absolutely. Because the cool thing about social dynamics is you never know it all, because personalities are so different. And if you think you're charismatic with a certain group of people, that doesn't mean person B will find you charismatic. So it gives you a better playing field. It's basically like you don't just go to the gym and work your biceps the whole time. You do different kinds of workouts to keep your body fresh. Same with the social world. Always try to meet new people to keep your social muscles sharp. Okay. Big friend circle or small friend circle? Personally, with me, I recommend a small friend circle and a big acquaintance circle. The reason for that is because you need to have certain value to your friends. If you call everyone your friend, then I think that just opens you up more towards getting backstabbed, more people that don't have like-minded beliefs in your close circle. So for the really close circle, I recommend having a few people in there. Then you can build out from there with a second tier friend circle that you're cool with, but they're not in your immediate circle. And then the third tier are your acquaintances that help you propel in life. What's your strategy?
It's very simple. Very simple. Every conversation that I have is a potential partnership. Why is that? Because not every partnership is for my benefit. So when I meet someone, I'm instantly looking to learn what their motivations are, what their talents are, so that I can refer them to other winners within my network who are looking to grow, learn, share, and ultimately reach the next level. And when you get into the mind frame of being a connector, where when people come into contact with you, okay, maybe 1 out of every 200 people that I speak to this year is going to be a partnership for me, but most of those people can be potential introductions, referrals, or connections and relationships for people that I know. Then it changes the game in terms of what the expectation is for the people that I come into contact with. So I don't think of it in terms of, let's say, circles that expand based on proximity and relationship. Of course, you have your closer friends and the people you can bounce ideas in the war room, so to speak. But when I go out and about, I can meet someone that I can connect to and help them find a job, help them start a business, help them land a client. And from that standpoint, every conversation is a potential win.
Excellent mindset to have. With that mindset, you're treating the social lifestyle as a lifestyle rather than an act where you have to be social today. You're always social, which is great. Okay, final question, Shadeep. What is your favorite platform to network? I hear LinkedIn a lot, but personally for me, Twitter is the way to go. Twitter is just a very informal ground to build not only connections, but build friends along the way. For me, it's Twitter. How about yourself?
I would say Facebook Messenger.
Facebook Messenger.
Why Facebook Messenger is the #1 platform is because there are so many successful people who have Facebook accounts. And as I mentioned, the example of 20 years ago, you have the ability to bypass gatekeepers. Now, every successful person may or may not have a Twitter account. And I use Twitter. I love Twitter. Great platform that has changed my life. But many successful people either have an on or off approach to Twitter. But if you have a Facebook account, by default, you have a Messenger account. So what I've learned is in attending events and let's say being parts of Facebook groups is giving me the ability to have conversations with top-notch individuals that I would have never had the opportunity to do so in any other scenario or platform. And since Facebook Messenger, I've taken those strategies and applied them to Twitter and applied them to LinkedIn, but I always give Facebook Messenger the upper echelon because it was the first time that the light bulb actually went off for me in that particular sense. Like, wait a minute, I can reach people who are at the upper crust of my industry or in various industries simply because they have access to this social network along with me.
Yep, it breaks down the walls. It just allows the entire world to connect seamlessly. Well, Shadid, today's conversation was very interesting. I mean, we talked about how to build a friend, how to avoid toxicity, how to love people from a distance. And we could honestly have this conversation for another couple of hours and we still wouldn't have all of the thoughts out there. I appreciate you for joining, Shadid. Where can my viewers find you?
Well, if you utilize the power of your smartphone and simply text the word self-made to 44222, you can get my daily adventures in entrepreneurship and social dynamics delivered directly to your inbox. So you get my adventures that are, let's say, summarized and share with you in a format that I do not share anywhere else in the world, directly in your inbox. So you can wake up with the latest and greatest business insights from me to you by texting self-made to 44222.
Excellent, Shadid. I'll also be sure to post your Twitter account in the description below. I appreciate you for coming on for today's episode. Also, if you would like more social dynamics content, feel free to subscribe to my free daily newsletter where you get content regarding social dynamics, public speaking, creativity, emotional intelligence, storytelling. Just one click away. Jadid, we will connect further through the DMs and through our future Skype calls. Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.